Good morning and welcome back to another We Are Sunderland morning briefing. It's a slightly bumper one this morning. It's myself, Joe Ramage, Dom Shaw. How are you doing, fellas?
I'm all right, mate. Well, I say I'm all right. The dust's settled a bit now. If we'd have done this in the immediate aftermath of Monday, that might not have been the answer. But dear me, we'll get on to it.
Yeah, I still feel a little bit as grey as the weather out there today, to be honest, after that.
Yeah, it was a funny old game, wasn't it? Before we get stuck into things, We Are Sunderland. Obviously, we're in partnership with the Farm Museum and Cost Specs Opticians. If you subscribe to We Are Sunderland at the moment, still just £1 for 6 months of coverage. If you do subscribe at the moment, you can be in with a chance of winning one of 3 pairs of hospitality tickets for Sunderland's final game of the season against Sheffield Wednesday. Also this morning, we've got a little bit of a giveaway that we're doing over on our YouTube. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, you could be in with a chance of winning the 1992 Cup Final shirt. We'll be giving away one of those to a lucky subscriber. So if you are watching over on YouTube, comment done. If you are already subscribed, you can still just comment done and we'll be selecting a winner next week. So you could get your hands on one of these. There's not much to shout about on the pitch, but you might as well look the business off it. So lads, let's get straight stuck into things. I mean, after we spoke about, before the game, just about Cardiff, didn't we? About how it was a great platform to sort of build on. Joe, you were down there, sat next to each other throughout during the game, and I think we just turned to each other after the second one went in, and just nobody could see that coming, could they?
No, I think the worst thing was that before the game, I think collectively everyone would have looked at it and thought the squad's getting stronger. We said that, we mentioned that on the Team News Live, and it looked as though we were getting somewhere again. Roberts coming back in. He's a player that will come on to. He obviously looked way off the pace in the end, but with him back in the squad, Clark back on the bench, the bodies that were back in at Cardiff on Friday back in the squad as well. Still, it just felt as though finally there was a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And then you get that first win down at Cardiff, best performance for some time. You're thinking surely that's a platform to go and build on. Against a Blackburn side who I think had won only once since mid-December, not won away since November. And to be honest, I mean, ironically, the first 20 minutes or so, Sunderland were all right. I think it felt as though they were the side that were in control. They were the side who were going to go, if it was going to, it felt more a case of when. Sunderland were pressing well, creating loads, but it felt as though they were the side who were going to take the initiative, and then a mistake or a slip from Roberts, Smodic unmarked in the box. And then it just all went to pot, really, didn't it? They capitulated at the end of the day. That's the best word I can think of to use to describe it. And the start of the second half, wow, that was just everything that Mike Dodds said. Obviously, just went out the window within 2 minutes. But it's just the ease with which Blackburn cut through Sunderland, right through the middle. We've seen that time and time again. At times, teams just able to slice through the middle of Sunderland. And there was bodies over in the box as well, and what happened in that second half was just, it's not acceptable, and it's sort of indicative really of what has been the case since December, and everything that's kind of gone wrong. And the worrying thing is that obviously it makes the Cardiff result and performance the anomaly, and you want it to the other way around, don't you? Really, really poor, and so many questions. I mean, depending for Mike Dodds' thoughts, you could see the frustration and the anger born on his face, but I mean, where do you go from there? Where do you go from a performance like that?
Yeah, I mean, in his post-match press conference, he certainly pulled no punches. I think I asked him at one of his pre-match press conferences a couple of weeks ago, how does he protect the players? How does he protect himself? He spoke about putting himself under the bus before his players, but he certainly didn't do that in his post-match press conference after that defeat, did he, Don?
No, it was... myself and Scott Wilson were talking about it afterwards, and we said really he was about as strong as you could be. Crap, pathetic, completely unacceptable. If they keep playing like that, they won't play for Sunderland again. It like really you couldn't get much stronger, could you?
Yeah.
I remember being at earlier this season when Sunderland beat Norwich. I can't remember what the score was, but David Wagner came in then, and this was at a time when Norwich was struggling, and Wagner was strong then, and he called into question his senior players. And I remember when he walked out thinking, that's a manager who knows he's on the brink. Now here we are, however months down the line, and he's still there. But that felt strong then, and that was nothing compared to Dodds' last. But after a defeat like that, what else could he say? Really, I think he has to look himself in the mirror as well. By the way, he said in the second half, I'd have subbed them all if I could. Well, he only made 3 subs. Yeah. There was more options there if you want to kind of make a real statement. The selection, Chris Rigg, I mean, I get it. He's, the age he is and only 4 days later. But I do think a little bit too much is made of this quick turnaround. It's Saturday, Tuesday, they play most weeks in the Championship. That is absolutely not an excuse. Two things that were the kind of standouts to me. A, how fragile the confidence must be to the way they just went under after conceding the first and second goals, and then the way they start the second. But B, and here we go again, how many times have we had this conversation over the last 12 months? Where's your experience there? Where are your leaders? Yeah. At half time, after the second goal, when it just needed someone to kind of settle things down, you come out the second half and you think, we want a reaction here. If we can get a goal in the first 10, 15 minutes, what you don't want to do is concede. A 2-0, you're in the game. If Sunderland score the next goal at 2-0, here's a Blackburn team that are 3 points above the relegation zone, haven't won under John Eustace, have won once since mid-December. See what they're made of. I couldn't believe how easy Sunderland made it for him. John Eustace, I mean, he afterwards he said all the right things, but he must have been staggered at how easy it was for Blackburn.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 days on, and I'm still no further forward into like where it went wrong. It was just an absolute capitulation of, I mean, like we said, the first 10, 15 minutes, Sunderland, I remember turning to Joe in the middle of it and going, Blackburn are there to be got at. Sunderland can get another win. And then come, the end of the first half whistle, it's for half time. You're just looking around thinking, right, so where's the response going to come from? I think even when that third goal went in, fans flooded out. You cannot blame supporters whatsoever. And I did a piece on We Are Sunderland that went up yesterday. It was just abject. They just looked bereft of ideas. Fans deserve better than what they're getting at the moment. And I've had this comment through from Lindsay, just obviously referencing what I spoke about earlier, saying, the players shouldn't be protected. They need a head coach who needs to be a real boss, not their mate. I think that's also in reference to obviously Luke O'Nien and people referring to Mike Dodds as Doddsy. It's difficult, isn't it? Because, he's a personable bloke, he's a likeable bloke, but at the same time, you can sort of see where those fan frustrations are coming from, can't you, Joe?
Absolutely, and I think that is a worthwhile point because he's had that transition of, he is kind of that sort of mate figure as a first team coach, but when you step up into the hot seat, you've got to differentiate that, haven't you? You've got to have that different head on where you've got to be the boss. And I don't know, it just seems strange to me. Like, can you imagine back in the day if sort of Alex Ferguson, if people were calling, if the team there were calling him Fergie and things like that, coming out in the press saying that? Yeah. I don't know, it just seems a little bit odd to me. And I know obviously you wouldn't necessarily have this conversation, like we didn't have this conversation on Friday after a win. It only comes after a defeat like that. But it is something that you can understand supporters feeling a little bit strange about. One thing I would say, I know Dom mentioned it there about the starting 11. I get it in terms of, I think I suggested it, the old saying of you don't change a winning team. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't think many would have complained at that starting lineup, like say with Roberts coming back in. Mundell came in for Barr, and I mean Barr's been a little bit indifferent at times. Obviously Mundell, he's struggled a little bit as well since he's come in, but I don't necessarily think the starting 11 is one that everyone would have complained about. But I do get the idea of changing the team, and I totally agree. The Easter weekend, a lot sometimes is made of it when it is that Saturday, Tuesday turnaround, and we see that how many times, sort of 8, 9, 10 times a season. The Chris Rigg one obviously is the debate around that because he played so well down at Cardiff, came off the bench and scored again. You would imagine he's going to be one who'll be straight back into the starting 11 against Bristol. But yeah, it's just where do they go from it? Like I said originally, where do they go from it? Where's their dissection of that game going into this week, and how do you pick them up from that going into Bristol? Because the season is over, really. You know, they're not going to get dragged into a relegation battle now. You wouldn't think. I think it's 11 points, isn't it? 6 games to play. It would take something major to happen. You know, Sunderland probably to lose all 6, and even then, you're asking a lot of teams to claw the deficit back. So how do you get up for it? I mean, for the fans' perspective, where's the incentive for them to go on Saturday after that, and after what's happened since December? It feels as though there isn't any, you know, and it's a season that has just been absolutely tarnished. It's just been thrown away, because even when the managerial decision was made in December, there were only 3 points outside the playoffs. That wasn't a season over type moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, the second half of the season, they've won 4 times in the league in 2024 in 15 games, I think it is. It's just how to just make it go up in smoke.
I think after that defeat, I think that's 19 defeats, and in the year that Sunderland went down to League One, they lost 23 games. I mean, that's indicative of where they, you know, you can't even say that the wheels have fallen off, because to a degree they have, but there's been these underlying inconsistencies throughout the entire campaign. We've spoken about them at length. There's a comeback to inexperience. At the moment, it just feels, the whole club feels flat. It feels flat off the pitch. I know we've had the talk of, you know, which rightfully you have to praise, obviously the investment going into the club for this summer. But that has to be matched by on the pitch investment as well, doesn't it, Dom?
Well, Joe said early doors, penny for the thoughts of Mike Dodds. For me, penny for the thoughts of those above him at full time on Monday, because there was more empty seats than fans left in at that stage. How many of those who did stayed to make their feelings known at full time more than anything else? And here we are. I just looked there, and it was this week last year when Sunderland drew 4-4 with Hull. And at that stage, a top 6 finish still looked a long shot, but there was excitement, a buzz. I mean, first things first, what a great watch this Sunderland team were this time last year. The fans were engaged with the team and the head coach. The head coach got it, didn't he? He got the club. He got what fans wanted. And the general feeling was, even if Sunderland missed out on the top 6, this was a team moving forwards. I just can't believe how much things, even in league terms, if Sunderland are only probably 2 or 3 places worse off than they were this time last year, it feels like they've gone backwards so much, doesn't it? With, let's be honest, bodged decision making. The decision to sack Tony Mowbray has backfired. The decision to appoint Michael Beale has badly backfired. Hasn't been helped by the Black Cats bar and all that furore for the Newcastle game. It just feels like it's been one own goal after another for the last 3 or 4 months. And as Joe said, the win over Cardiff, that's the anomaly. The performance, the performance and the win over Cardiff is the anomaly. What we've become accustomed to and become used to in recent months is a Sunderland team that's a hard watch, that don't know how to win. And that I think the fans have fallen out of love with.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke with Luke afterwards, didn't we, Joe? And there was an interesting comment just about, obviously, the win at Cardiff. We are looking at that as an anomaly now. When you look at the last 9 games, I think lost 7, drawn 1, won 1. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you can sit there and say, well, we missed out on this big decision. This decision didn't go our way. We're unfortunate there. But in the grand scheme of things, you've still lost 7 games. It's a damning run of form, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think you said it right. Like, where's your leaders? Where's your experience? And he's the one. He is the one, isn't he? And that was, I think, only the second or third time that Mike Dodds has been able to call upon him and Dan Ballard at centre back. And obviously, it wasn't Luke O'Nine's best game, was it? You know, I think he was certainly involved in a couple of the goals where he look back and think that he could have done better. But just across the board, there was nothing. It was the way in which they folded that, which was the more true aspect of it. I mean, we've seen Sunderland under this ownership in terms of, if you want to throw the experience thing at it, there's been heavy defeats within the tenure. I think if you go back to League One, they got beat 5-1 at Rotherham, 6-0 at Bolton.
Even last year, they
got beat 5-1 off Stoke. This season, 4-0 off Middlesbrough. All right, circumstances there with the red card. 5-1 here. You know, these are heavy defeats to have within the space of a couple of seasons. You know, like if you look over the club's history, these defeats that stack right up there, you know. And it's just, I asked that question too, look, online, like, can you use that Stoke game? And, you know, he said quite a few times, oh, yeah, but it's not one to forget because we'll use it to make sure it doesn't happen again. We've just rhymed off there 4 or 5 games where it's happened over the space of the last 2 seasons. So it is a big concern. And it's just how easy they went through them. There's, like, from centre-back to centre midfield, and whether that's the Neil and Equa debate or, again, like, experience in there, we've seen teams that can just slice through Sunderland. Stoke, with a prime example last season, where they were just hitting them on the counter-attack, and it was a similar sort of thing. They were sort of middling out in the league table, you know, it's a game that Sunderland would have fancied the chances in, similar to on Monday, and they just carved through them at will. And there's something there that's just not quite right, whether it's personnel in terms of needing that extra body in there, you know, all the head coach stuff, what's gone on with the season. It's a big issue to address, no doubt about it. And that is Monday was the clearest evidence yet. You know, Tom mentioned there, penny for the thoughts of Christian Speakman, Kirill Dreyfus, wherever he sort of took that game in. What must you be thinking there? Because this season, like you say, when you walked off of that Luton playoff semi-final, first leg, the mood, the atmosphere around the place, everybody stayed in the seats. Compare that with Monday, where there was next to nobody left in. This year, you've had sort of banners brought into the ground in protest. The shift in mood is an absolute 180, and you can't deny that, and it's a massive, massive concern.
Just to quickly jump in on Luke O'Nien. I think it's worth pointing. After a defeat like that, a player should come out and front up. But fair play to him and credit to him for coming and speaking to the press afterwards, because it'd be easy after a defeat like that. We've seen it at various clubs where they wouldn't put a player up. He came out, fronted up, and then I left. We left the stadium like at 7 o'clock time, and he was still outside signing autographs and speaking to fans. Fair play after a defeat like that. It's what players should be doing, especially a captain, but many wouldn't. So fair play to him, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I was going to say, just to follow on into the head coach thing now, obviously, Mike Dodds is still set to take charge until the end of the season. But it's just my personal opinion. I think, obviously, if you lose to Bristol City, I think, for one, Mike Dodds is close with Christian Speakman. If he has aspirations of coaching, you know, as he says he has done, whether that be at Sunderland or elsewhere, he's got to start to look to protect himself. The club, it's almost like they've just given up on protecting themselves on the pitch, because when has this ever run a form? You know, 7 defeats from 9, 1 win, 1 draw. When has that ever been acceptable at Sunderland Football Club? It's just not. They need to bring in, or look to, in my opinion now, they need to try and fast forward this search for a new head coach. Now, of course, there'll be things that play into that. For example, just use Will Still as an example. Obviously, there's talk that his buyout clause is cheaper in the summer. You know, you've got the potential of managers being on gardening leave until the summer. So I can understand wanting to wait if that's, you know, when your manager is set to become more available. But given the way things are going at the minute, they need a real new lease of life breathing in that club. Supporters need to feel a bit of positivity heading into the summer. And if anything, I think the next 6 games should be a free hit for a new man coming in, just to put their own stamp on it, just to iron things out and just try. I know it might sound hypocritical, given we sat here 2 weeks on the podcast and said, look, there hasn't been a new manager bounce, but I just feel like they need to do something a bit different, don't they?
I don't know what Joe thinks. I think that bring someone in now if you can get the man you want. I think the priority has to be getting the right candidate. Now, if your first choice candidate is going to be available in the summer, wait until the summer. As Joe said, it would take an absolute disastrous turn of events for Sunderland to get sucked in below, mainly because they'd probably have to lose all the games, and how many of the teams would have to put a run of a remarkable run of wins together below them. So I don't think that's going to happen. I do think it's hugely important to go into the summer with momentum and feel good factor and positivity. Yeah. What you don't want is to stutter now. Well, stutter's been kind through to the end of the season with defeats and draws, and God forbid any repeats of Monday. And you go into the summer, and the first job of whoever's coming in is not just to kind of address what's on the pitch, but to go about lifting the mood as well. He's almost 1-0 down before he even starts. Exactly. So if you can bring if your first choice candidate is available now, then bring him in. But say if it's someone who's out of work, say it's Paul Heckingbottom, who's been heavily linked in the last week. If it's Paul Heckingbottom and if he's going to get the job, would he want to come in now? If I'm Paul Heckingbottom, I want to wait until the summer. I don't want to be associated with kind of this disappointing season. I want to get the season, draw a line under it, and come in the summer and think, right, we're starting from afresh now. Because I think it's difficult to do that if you're coming in now. I'm not saying it is Heckingbottom. He's just the kind of first example that comes to mind.
That's a tough one on it. Like in terms of, you just want to get to the season because you don't want the new manager to lose any sort of. Matty, you mentioned the word bounce there. You don't want any of that to be taken out of the equation. You'd rather that happen right at the start of next season and start afresh. If a new manager comes in, say like what you said, say if the result on Saturday against Bristol doesn't go where they want it, you've then got Leeds and West Brom. If you bring a new manager in, they're two games that you could lose anyway. So then, I get why people would want it to happen now, but I think the win over Cardiff did was make sure that they're probably not going to get dragged into that relegation battle. And as bad as it sounds to just write it off, I feel as though they just need to get this season done. They just need to get over that, get it out of the way with, and then I'd appoint them the day after the final game of the season against Sheffield Wednesday. If they're there and they've got the man and they know who it's going to be and it's possible to do so, I'd announce that whoever it's going to be on, what is it, the 5th of May or the 6th of May when the season's over, do it then. So then you know straight away who the guy is going to be taking forward, and you've got the entire summer. And then obviously the focus can go on elsewhere, such as recruitment, which is, we've spoken at large how important that's going to be this year.
I think that's crucial. Like Joe says, if it's going to be the summer, there's no excuses for it not being early doors in the summer, is it? They've had a couple of months to build up. It has to be early in the summer, so they've got the full summer and the full pre-season. And I think Joe alludes to it there. I don't know what you think, Matty, but you know we've talked a lot clearly about the strikers, and signing a striker is obviously a priority. But I think like a 6, a destroyer, a holding midfielder, because Mowbray talked about this. Was it back in the summer that Mowbray was prioritising then, saying we need to strengthen in midfield? I know we're going over all ground here. Mowbray and Michael Beale both talked about the need for grey hairs. Now, I'm not saying it has to be a 30-plus something midfielder, but I do think as important as signing a centre forward is strengthening in the middle of the park there and bringing in a kind of a natural destroyer to probably let then Dan Neil and Pierre Ekwa do what they're good at.
Yeah, I think Michael Beale said it as well, which is, he wanted someone a bit more defensive minded to free up Neil and Ekwa. Then two weeks later, the question was put to Christian Speakman, and he said he didn't know where the idea of that them needing that position had come from. And I just think that's Sunderland have tied themselves in knots this season. I think just like with the message off the pitch. I think we spoke last week, didn't we, Joe, just about the January signings, Callum Styles, Leo Hjelde. When you've got your Dennis Sirk and Adji back, does Callum Styles and Leo Hjelde start ahead of them? In my opinion, probably not. I know you've got a small data pool, but from what you've seen so far, wouldn't suggest that they do. For me, yeah, they do. They need something different. This has been a problem of Sunderland since. Look, I think the model's done great to get them to where they're at this year. It clearly hasn't worked. It clearly has not worked. It's fine to still support the idea of bringing in younger players, but it's when the balance is wrong, and this is completely wrong this season. Like we've said, it's been clear as day since maybe the first couple of months of the season that they need players with championship experience. Now, I'm not saying Corey Evans is the answer because he's been out for a year, but instantly, and again, it's under 21s football, but from when I watched him there, he just sits there as a perfect anchor. And that's what Sunderland have missed. They just need, they've got so many technically brilliant players, good on the ball, but when they have an off day, and as Joe rattled them off earlier, it happens. They just get cut apart far too easily. Now, it might not be a good comparison to compare them to, the likes of Huddersfield Town under Neil Warnock, for example. Now, yes, they'd struggle at the bottom end, but you got a feeling that you just need a bit more defensive solidity. Now, again, that might be hypocritical, say, because Sunderland have one of the best defensive records in the Championship, or did have prior to this game. But when you look at them, they are very slight. They're very. You don't feel like they're going to overpower teams on the regular basis, do you?
No, I mean, is it too much to ask Evans to put him in from the start against Bristol City? It feels like drastic changes are needed. Then would that be unfair on Evans? Do you think, Joe?
Yeah.
Is it too much to put him straight in?
I mean, I was surprised that he wasn't involved in the squad on Monday, to be honest. After the comments on Friday, it felt as though he was the one who might have come back in. I totally agree. Like I say, that's why I brought that up, just how easy they are to play against. But that goes back again to the overriding picture with Christian Speakman and Kirill as well. But Speakman in particular, this is a huge summer for him because the managerial change is probably on his head as well. Like in getting Michael Beale in, the last 3 transfer windows. All right, he might be working within parameters set by Kirill. But if you look at the money that's been spent, so look, in January, for example, what was 2 million for Leo Hjelde? The fee that it might be a similar sort of fee for Styles if they're going to buy him. Same for Mundell. Rusin was, I think, the largest outlier in the summer, a couple of £1 million. That money there, can you go and get some? Look at Nathan Broadhead, for example. What if you go back to January before when they're interested, that was sort of figure for him. You know what I mean? There's players out there where you think for that kind of money, you might only get 1 for the 4 that they've got, but you might be getting more product out of them. Do you know what I mean? And it's huge for him, and these 6 games might do. Support frustrations might start turning that way, sort of vocally in the ground as well, if they're going to stay in, because there's no reason for them to be there at the moment. Like we said, going to the Bristol game, but that is what people need to see now. They need to see something change in terms of bringing players in where they might not be ready for the next 6 to 12 months. There needs to be players brought in that can go into that starting lineup and make an impact now, and that number 6 role is absolutely one of them, along with the striker.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what you both think as well, just heading into this Bristol City game, because you've touched on it there, Dom. Like, is there a need for drastic change, or is it really a case of, like Luke said, to us too, is it a case of just, you get these games, you get these runs where things don't go your way? Mike Dodds said that as soon as he felt Sunderland got the first win, it'd snowball. He got the first win, and it just imploded. It didn't work out that way. So do they need to go back to the drawing board and start again? Do they need to rip it up and look at these next 6 games as an experimentation period where they're seeing, Tommy Watson, for example, come in, maybe play Callum Styles in a different role? Do you think they need to do that?
It's an interesting one on Saturday because, and as I asked Mike Dodds after the game on Monday, well, what does the next 48 hours look like now? How do you deal with how do you deal with this in the next couple of days? And he said, what he has to do is decide whether he needs to speak to the players as individuals or as a collective. He clearly gave them a right rollicking immediately afterwards, hadn't he? There's that balance, isn't there, on Monday? So do you, bear with me on this, like stick to a similar team or even the same team and say, right, you were humiliated on Monday. Yeah. Go and put it right. Or do you do the direct opposite and completely ring the changes? So off the top of my head, Patrick Roberts didn't look fit, didn't look ready to start, did he? You bring Rigg back in. There's 4 or 5 straight away where you think, I could see him changing them. But when you mentioned there about the likes of Tommy Watson, I don't think it's maybe not a healthy environment, but I don't think it's a positive environment at the minute. And if Sunderland were to go 1-0 down on Saturday, then the atmosphere could very quickly and understandably turn. And I don't know whether that would be right for his development. Now, I say that, I'd start Rig on Saturday, which says everything, which is testament to his character and ability and everything else. But I think that's the difficult one for Dodds. Like, how does he... And the answer is probably what he's seen from the players since Monday and what he'll continue to see before Saturday. I think it'll be interesting to see what he says on Thursday. Like, when you speak to a manager 2 or 3 days after a game, regardless of how the game's gone, the mood shifted slightly because it's still so raw, isn't it, in the immediate aftermath? And obviously, they've had chance to settle on things. We all get it done with as fans. Like, you'll watch a game and you'll think something, and then the next day, kind of with time to consider, you perhaps have a different view. You probably think more emotionally straight after a game, don't you? And there's no doubt Dodds was emotional. It'll be interesting to see how he deals with it at his press conference this week. I suspect he'll talk up the reaction from the lads in training and that sort of thing. But it's all right saying that. They've then got to back it up, haven't they, on Saturday? And it's I think it's a real gut test for the players on Saturday to see how they react, whoever it is who gets the nod to play.
Yeah, what do you think, George? Do you think we need to rip it up? Or
the temptations there, I totally get what Dom's saying. You know, you could make wholesale changes, or you could say, right, go and fix what you did on Monday. Given that you brought a 1-4-0 down, I'd expect Jack Clarke to probably start, which you know, I don't know what you thought about that. I was surprised to see him come on in that situation. You know, coming back, he's obviously come back a little bit early, it seems, from, you know, an ankle ligament injury. To bring him on in a game that was dead seemed a little bit strange to me. I suppose I understand why he did it as well, but you just hold him until Saturday for me. But I'd expect him to probably come back in. Rig, I think he'll come in. Beyond that, but then beyond that, how many changes who can come in? You know, Agialisi will be an interesting one. You know, he touched on him, didn't he? Sort of saying that he just wanted to give the other lads a chance. It wasn't really an injury. Do you bring him in at full back, like you say, move Styles into the middle? There's a lot of ways that you can go to, like you say, make the wholesale changes as such. But I don't know. I'm not sure whether he will. I think he might be more inclined to send the lads out to go and fix what they did on Monday. Go that way. Yeah,
interesting. I think we'll leave that one there today. Thanks for joining us and listening. We Are Sunderland's still just £1. Subscribe for 6 months worth of content, and I'll quickly just pull this up once more. If you subscribe over on YouTube, if you just comment saying you've done that on this video, then you could be in with a chance of winning a 1992 Cup final shirt. So thanks again for joining us. We'll catch you later in the week once we've heard from Mike Dodds.